Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we're back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod. And of course, I am joined by the $1 Million Man himself, WWE Hall of Famer Ted DiBiase. What's going on, Ted?
Marcus, it's another day in paradise. Another day, another dollar. Or maybe I should say another million.
Must be nice.
Yeah, it would be if it was real.
And you were telling me that you're enjoying some nice weather down there. So, brother, spring.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you what, that is worth $1 million. You know, yeah, it is 71 degrees here in Jackson, Mississippi, and usually Mississippi in the heat of the summer, it's kind of like comparing a sauna to a steam bath. Go to Phoenix, Arizona, you're in the sauna. Come to Mississippi, you're in the steam bath. I mean, you walk out the door and you're sweating.
Whew.
You know, but anyway,
Boy,
it's okay. Right now it's 70 degrees and a little breeze and lots of sun, and it's perfect.
Boy, the air conditioning bill down there in the summertime must be brutal. But let me say,
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I'm jealous up here. It's still pretty chilly up here in the north. I'm down here in my little basement office. That's why I'm wearing my cap. I gotta stay warm around here. But man, we're bringing some fun content to our listeners today, Ted. It's our 11th edition of Ask Ted Anything, where
All
we
right,
let
let's
our
do it.
listeners, our listeners are taking over the show as they do once a month. Please, guys, keep your questions rolling in by posting them to Ted's social media, the show's social media, or a lot of folks, as I've said before, they like to private message me on Twitter with question requests. So you can do that at Marcus P. D'Angelo on Twitter. As always, we will continue to build these questions up and roll the ones we miss over from one episode to another. And let me go ahead and hit you guys with this right up front. Get over to YouTube and get subscribed today. It's youtube.com/@everybody'sgotapod. We have got tons of great clips, full episodes, and YouTube exclusive clips from this show that you can only get on our channel. That means that if you aren't subscribed, you're missing big chunks of the story from Ted. Have I also mentioned that we now have 2 Hall of Famers sharing that page? That's right. Jim Duggan is part of the team, and we do a bi-monthly podcast exclusively on the YouTube channel called The Hacksaw Hour. As a matter of fact, just yesterday, as the podcast comes out, a new episode of the Hacksaw Hour was made available on YouTube, and it's the second half of a 2-part episode about his rivalry with Yokozuna. Seriously, you guys are missing out if you're not part of our channel. Get subscribed now, support our show, and enjoy some great content today at youtube.com/@everybody'sgotapod.
And just like my good friend Jim Duggan always says, ho!
He's got me saying it on the podcast, like at the start or the finish, and I'm like waking up my daughter upstairs, shouting down here. Oh man, Jim is a blast, and that podcast is a blast. So please, guys, go and check it out. The only place to get it, youtube.com/@everybody'sgotapod. All right, well, we can get into these fan questions. We've got a whole bunch of them, so we'll do our best to hit as many as we can. First, we've got Gray K, who asks, besides his, what's the best gimmick Ted has seen? And he follows that up with, how about the worst? So first, Ted, besides your own gimmick, what is the best gimmick that you have seen in wrestling?
Oh my gosh. Oh, you know, I don't know. I mean, to me, that's a tough question because there's so many, and it's kind of like you can classify a gimmick. You know, it's kind of like the Road Warriors. That was a gimmick. You know, the $1 Million Man was a gimmick. You know, all these different gimmicks. Just shoot.
Yeah, I mean, let's be clear. The greatest gimmick probably of all time is the $1 Million Man, because not a lot of guys were getting the opportunity to spend the boss's money, stay in 5-star hotels, limo service. So, like, you had the greatest gimmick ever. I don't know. Does somebody like The Undertaker, if just from a pure gimmick standpoint, do you think it might be him?
I would say that The Undertaker he's got to be near the top because his character is probably one of the biggest and most well known to this day.
Do any gimmicks stand out to you as the worst gimmick?
Whew, wow.
Um, how well did you know Mike Shaw? You remember him?
Who?
Mike Shaw. He came
Who?
in he came into the WWF as a monk, and then he became Bastion Booger.
Well, I remember the name Bastion Booger, but I don't remember Mike's name at all. So I must not have been very impressed.
Hang on. I'm gonna go ahead and pull up a picture of him to give you a reference here. The Bastion Booger.
Oh my gosh.
Does that ring a bell for you?
Oh yeah, please, please, please,
Pull that shit down.
please. That's. I see. I was trying not to remember.
It's like yeah, I've spent years trying to get that out of your memory.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I don't know, to me, that's gotta be one of the worst gimmicks, like, a
yeah,
going nowhere kinda you would think that when you bring a guy in, no matter who it is, the idea would be, "I'm gonna position this guy to make me as much money as humanly possible."
Wait,
Kev.
wait. Let me see that one more time.
Alright, one more time.
That he's got the face of like a what like a little pug dog.
He does.
Like a smashed face with a fat body.
He does. And man, he'd be out there, like, eating ice cream cones and stuff like that, just what a mess of a gimmick. So, alright, we'll count that as the worst gimmick. Alright, next up, we have got Five Ball Hammy, who asks, "Hi, Ted. Were you ever asked to be on WWE Legends House? Did you ever watch it? Do you remember that show?"
Legends House. Yeah, I think I remember the show.
Reality show where they've got, like, Jim Duggan, Roddy Piper, Tony Atlas, trying to remember, like, Hillbilly Jim, Jimmy Hart, people like that, Gene Okerlund, all living in a house, and they, like, kinda film all of the ongoings there, and it was on WWE Network.
You know, I remember that. I can't remember. I think I might have done something,
Okay.
but I don't remember what it was. Whatever it was, it wasn't much.
It would've been cool if you were one of the people living in the house. How do you think Mel would have felt about you going away to live somewhere else for a while to film a show?
Well, okay, so they actually all had to live in that house.
Yeah, and I think that they were assigned roommates,
Yeah, I
and
wasn't there.
oh, okay.
Yeah, and if they'd asked me to do it, I'd have said no.
To live with a bunch of guys like that, oof,
No.
it'd be tough. And actually, on that show, Jim, likable Jim Duggan wound up having a big issue with Tony Atlas, and Jim to this day says, that was the closest he's come in years to getting into a physical fight with somebody, was him and Tony Atlas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, I guess Tony was just tough to live with. What were your experiences like around Tony?
I had no trouble, Tony. Tony was always pretty nice guy to me. Good guy. In terms of my relationship with him.
This is
Yeah,
not we are not gonna talk often about Tony Atlas here on the show, so I might as well just ask this right now. Ted, how much do you know about his, foot fetish?
yeah. I think everybody that knows Tony knows he has this thing for feet. And when I first heard that, I said, "You're ripping, aren't you?" He says, "Oh no." I always kept my shoes on.
He puts stuff out there himself, it's all over social media, and God bless him, I want Tony
Yeah,
Atlas to do whatever makes him happy,
yeah,
but he'll put stuff out there with, like, women, like, kicking him in the face and stepping on his face and stuff like that, so, hey, man, whatever, blows your hair back, right, brother?
yeah. Whatever rolls your socks up
Now,
on your feet.
I've heard a lot of guys say, like, they'd be out to dinner with him, and he would, like, convince a waitress to, like, do that stuff with him right there in the restaurant. Have you ever gone to dinner with Tony Atlas, Ted?
No.
Alright, well, we're gonna try to remedy that. Let's see if he's gonna be in Philly. We'll all get together.
Oh, no, we won't.
All right. Next up, we've got, I think it's pronounced Nevin, who asks, "What's the worst backstage fight you ever witnessed?"
Didn't see too many of those. Well, I saw a very brief brawl between Jim Duggan and Matt Bourne.
I'm sure it didn't last very long with Jim in there.
No, it didn't.
So Ted, I've actually got a question for you that was one that we had recently on an episode of Ask Jake Anything. That was a great question, and I don't have the name of the person who asked it. I'll try to look it up and credit them next time. But it was just such a unique question. I thought I had to bring it over here. If you could ask any wrestler from any era any question, who would you pick and what would you ask?
Any question of any wrestler from any era.
That's right.
Okay. I would ask this question, and it's almost a dual question. In all of wrestling, in all of professional wrestling, all territories included, who would you say were legitimately the 5 best pro wrestlers?
Hmm.
And then the other part of that question would be, who would you consider the 5 legitimately tough pro wrestlers? In other words, they could be 5 of the top guys in wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not necessarily legitimately the 5 toughest guys in pro wrestling. You know what I'm
Gotcha.
saying? Okay.
Yes. Here's the other part of this question was, who would you ask that question to? Is there one person in particular whose opinion you value enough that you is like that's the guy you've got to ask?
Wow. That is a good question. I would, okay. I would have asked, I would ask that question to, there's not just one, because Dory Funk Sr.,
All right.
my dad, and again, Terry Funk,
Yeah.
Jack Briscoe. Those are guys I would ask, because those are guys who were NWA world champions who wrestled so many different guys in so many different territories.
Greg is up next and asks, any George the Animal Steele stories?
George Animal Steel stories.
Yeah. Did you ever have did you get a lot of experiences around George?
Not really. I mean, for a guy who acted so weird,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he played the part extremely well. In reality, did you know he was a school teacher?
I have heard that.
Yeah. Here's a guy who's going, oh, oh,
And eating turnbuckles.
eating turnbuckles, and in real life was a school teacher. So
Man.
I don't have a lot of George Animal Steel stories.
Imagine being one of his students, and Georgie Animal Steel is your teacher, who you have to respect, but then you're seeing him acting like a complete wild man out there. That would be
Yeah.
something else. Adam Electric asks, you did a return stint on NXT. Would you do more, hopefully, on the main roster, mentor, or a manager role? Dead, if they came to you and wanted you to come in and do it, are you interested in a full-time return to action with WWE as a manager?
You know what? I loved wrestling. I loved wrestling passionately. It's been a part of my whole life. But everything has a beginning, and everything does have an end. And I just turned 70 this past January, and I've got I'm not hopefully, and I'm having to kick myself in the butt sometimes to get up and go to the gym and keep moving, but I'm going to keep doing that, and I hope I have several more years. But but I'm just, I had my run. I'm happy with what I had, and I'm not, it's
Ready to move on, you know?
ready to move on. Yeah,
And right now, you and the other guys who are retired and established your names, became Hall of Famers, you're all in a good spot where it's like you can go to Comic Cons and make good money, meet your fans, and still get to interact with fans that way.
yeah,
So it's like, man, it's why mess with a good thing at this point, right?
yep.
I'm with you. All right, next up we have got a Shato, I guess is how you say it, and they ask least favorite move to take.
Least favorite move to take.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, well, I can't really think of any, like,
I've heard a lot of guys say like pile driver for an example where it's like, hey, I need to trust this guy with my neck right now in this moment. You know what I mean?
uh, well, that could be a possibility for that reason. But, the one thing that I always did is when the guy got me up for the pile driver, what I did is I put my hands behind, like behind him, because my head's between his legs.
Mm-hmm.
I put my hands behind him, and so when he sat down, my hands were going to hit the mat first, and I knew there was going to be this much room between my head and the floor.
Ah, okay.
And that wasn't always, but but that's just something I did as a self protector. I mean, it obviously doesn't always work, but I guess if there is a move that could be dangerous, that's one of them.
Did anybody ever drop you rough with a pile driver?
No,
No, you were always in, never really took a bad one.
no,
Ah,
I can't remember.
man, lucky you.
You know, um, and I got to where I got to where I got to, I started doing things that I never did. And, and sometimes it would happen accidentally. Like I remember, um, I would, because of my relationship with the Funks, I would start off, I would do like a spinning, they had what they called the spinning toe hold,
Mm-hmm.
and I would do the spinning toe hold into um, where I would lay back with the leg, and they, the other guys start screaming and everything. But I have had guys where I would start doing that. I'd go around once or twice, and then they kick me off.
Yeah.
And the first time I did this, I did it accidentally. I hit the top rope, and my feet went up, and I went right over the top. But my feet hit the ground first, and I went to the floor. And I said to myself, "Damn, I didn't know I could do that." So then I started doing it purposely.
Hey, pretty athletic stuff.
Not bad for an old fart.
Not too shabby. You think you could
I
still
don't
do it
think I'd
today?
try it now. The one time I went, the people have asked me, because I went back and I did that thing with Cameron Grimes and LA Knight for NXT. And I remember when we got in there, they said, "Okay, Mr. DiBiase, when we do this thing, we'll do a deal." And it's like, so when he hits you, he says there'd be a couple guys behind you that kind of catch you and let you down easy. And I said, "No, you won't." I said, "I'm going to do it just like I've always done it. And hopefully some of you punks will be watching and learn how to do it right." I didn't say punks.
Now, did you do like an actual like flat back?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I need to go
You
find this
should
footage. We should cover it on one of these episodes. We'll go back and watch some of this stuff.
go back and see it. Yeah. Boom, I hit it. I hit it hard.
Man, so that you took a bump. When's the last time you took a bump prior to that?
It had been a while.
I'd imagine.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you can be sure that I tested the ring before I ever took the bump.
Oh yeah.
In other words, I stood in the middle of that ring. If you a good wrestling ring, if you stand in the middle of the ring, it's got a little bit of bounce to it.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot, but a little bit.
And that's where you know you'll
Enough
be
to,
safe.
enough to make the difference. And that little bit of difference is the difference between that little bit of difference and hitting a hardwood or a hard concrete floor.
Ooh, and that's what we hear about the old
They don't
WWF
give it
rings.
all.
We hear that the old WWF rings, it was, gosh, the name is escaping me right now, but the guy who produced Saturday Night's Main Event told Vince, like, hey, I can see that ring moving an awful lot when a guy takes a bump. You know, it doesn't look good on TV. And that's why Vince went to those harder rings in the WWF for years, where, like, and then finally he changed it. Vince would end up changing it in like 1999 when he did like a cage match himself and took a few bumps on that mat. And he was like, boy, this mat is really stiff. And that's when he changed it. So that mat that you were wrestling on your whole career with the WWF was really a stiff, nasty mat, from what I've heard.
Mhm. Yeah. That's why I always took my bumps in the corners.
Ah, why the corner? Is that a soft spot in the ring?
It was softer. Yeah.
No way.
Dead center of the ring. I mean, it was, like, yeah, there was no
Sturdy.
give.
Oof. No,
There was a
thank you.
little more give in the corners.
When you see those guys taking like superplexes and like people falling off the cage into the ring, and it was that era of ring, no
Yeah.
thanks. Nope. All right, next up we've got Rusty Vandalay, who asks, on Jake's podcast, he talked about joking around with you and Virgil by stealing the $1 million belt. Did you think it was actually gone, or did you have a hunch that it was just a joke from Jake? So, all right, do you remember Jake stealing the $1 million belt?
Yeah. Yeah.
What can you tell us about that experience?
Well, of course it was a rib, but I just got all over Virgil. I mean, the guardian of the belt. And I can't remember where we did that or where that happened, but what I should have done is, and I thought about it, but I said, I don't want that damn snake in my room.
Oh, you were saying you should have stolen Damien to get back at him.
Yeah, yeah, but the hell with that. I don't want a live snake, crawling around my hotel room.
That would have been a rib on yourself.
And I think Jake's got a couple of stories about getting up and going in the bathroom and the snake's not there.
Jake and I just talked about this very thing on the podcast. Now, I asked him if he ever saw that the snake wasn't there, and he was like, "No, it was pretty much always there on the bathroom floor." But he was like, the real problem that he bumped into was, you're stumbling into a bathroom in the middle of the night, you got to pee or whatever, you
Yeah,
flip on the light, and you're exposed in a very sensitive area. You look down, and there's a snake between your legs. Like that's oof,
yeah,
that doesn't sound like fun.
no,
No, thank you. All right. So next up, we've got Potato the Hero, who asks, if you were to have retired on your own terms, how would you have liked to retire? So, Ted, thinking back to 1993, I know that you kind of set an expiration date on your career after the way that your father passed away young.
yeah.
So, that being said, if you were perfectly healthy in 93 instead of suffering that neck injury that ultimately ended your career, and Vince said, hey, Ted, let's make this your final year in wrestling. You can pick who you want to work with, or where you want to work, the circumstances, everything. How would you have liked to have gotten your send off?
Oh gosh, I don't know that I've never even thought about that. It's kind of
Right?
like,
It's a
uh,
thinker. I mean, there's so many people that you could kind of honor and pay homage to for the end of your career.
yeah, and it's kind of like, it's like if I could, if I knew I was having my last run as an active wrestler, there's a couple people that I could probably choose from to have that run with, and one of them would have been Jake
Man,
because, again, we both came from the same school of the wrestling psychology, what wrestling is and what gets over and what doesn't and how you do it. And so I would have been very comfortable with Jake. Um, oh gosh, who else?
You know, you and I have talked about how you had a match with Bret Hart that was a real classic. I mean, how cool would it have been for you to end your career doing like a 6-month program with Bret Hart, and then at the end of it, you call it quits? That could have been great.
Yeah, I mean that would that would have been a good run.
And you
Yeah.
blow it off with a scaffold match, right? You go off the scaffold.
No, no, no.
I had you
Yeah,
there at first, and then I changed it up.
yeah, scaffold match. The only part of a scaffold match I want is a spectator. Now I'll do a cage match, and all that stuff. But when they started doing that stuff on the scaffold and everything, I said, that's just, it's too easy to get hurt bad.
Ah, man, like you fall wrong, you hit the wrong thing coming off a scaffold, you're
Yeah,
talking possible paralysis, possible death.
yeah, yeah.
Yep, no thanks. All right, we'll do a few more here. Jonathan Montgomery is up next. Big fan of the show and currently listening while I'm deployed overseas. Thank you for your service, Jonathan. I grew up in the Jerry Lawler territory, and Jerry probably wrestled in every high school gymnasium in a 100-mile radius of Memphis. Did you ever work in the high school gyms?
Oh yeah, there was a lot of high school gyms that we wrestled in, like in Mid South and different, like little communities. That yeah, we would go into a high school gym. But and that's the one thing I can't ever. But Jerry Lawler, you know, I can't remember ever wrestling Jerry.
I feel like as I was doing research, I recently saw where you had a match with Lawler somewhere along the way. I don't know when or where. I'm gonna have to dig back into what I was doing for research, but I feel like I saw where you had a match with Lawler, and I want to say that you went over.
I just can't remember. If I did, I didn't have but maybe one.
Yeah.
And Jerry and I get along. I got no problem with Jerry. Of course, I never worked under him. In other words, he was Memphis,
Hmm.
the Memphis territory.
So yeah, your perspective might change on him if you had, worked for him or for Jerry Jarrett, which, Jerry Jarrett, one of the greatest promoters of all time. But, you do always hear that like, man, if it wasn't a good house, you'd find out because you weren't gonna get a very strong check at the end of the night.
But I'm going to tell you somebody that Jerry wouldn't do a job for.
Who's that?
Elvis.
Wouldn't do a job for Elvis. I'd put over Elvis.
No, I'm
No, I
teasing,
know.
really. I mean, it's kind of like, and I've never asked Jerry that question. I would, I want to. I mean, you would think. I mean, Jerry Lawler's from Memphis. You would think that somewhere along the way he had to meet him.
I would think so, yeah.
You would think so. I
Especially,
don't know for
you
sure,
and I
but
discussed that Elvis was a wrestling fan, so,
yeah,
I would think that Elvis has crossed Jerry's path at some point or another.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I heard several stories about like when he was a little boy, and the old wrestler that I knew that would have been there in that era was a guy named Tretch Phillips, and we were in the Memphis, the the auditorium there. It's a big round building. It's a lot like the one here in Jackson, and he said that when Elvis was a little kid that we would park in the back, and all these little kids would offer to carry our bags in, for us so they could get in free. And they let all the little kids in free. Elvis was one of those little kids. And they said later not when he was a huge star, but when he was becoming this household name, that they would sneak him into the building early. And he said, and we weren't in the building. He said, when next time you go in that building, look up top and there's a catwalk. You can see, it comes from two sides. Actually, it comes from all sides, but right in the middle, right over the ring, there's a place up there. And they would sneak him in there, and he would get up, he'd climb up there, and it's high enough to where you look up there, you could see somebody, but it's high enough that there's no way in hell you could tell who it was.
Wow.
Well, I just imagine how many people looked up there and said, "I wonder who that is."
Yep. And here it's the King of Rock.
Yeah,
That would be something, man.
it would be.
Hey, that's telling too. Elvis Presley, a big fan of professional wrestling. Wrestling appeals to all people from all walks of life. It's like a
Yeah.
universal language. Um,
Well,
you know,
they say even some of the outfits that Elvis wore. I mean, he had the big, like the jacket that he'd come out in,
huge
and
collar.
he had a belt, and the belt was like, I mean, kind of like a wrestling championship belt.
Yeah, he'd have the giant buckle on it, and it would be
Yeah,
all, yeah, wow.
yeah,
I never put that together. That's awesome.
yeah.
Ted, the question about you wrestling in like high school gyms, it brought up a question I wanted to ask you. We all hear the stories about terrible conditions in locker rooms for smaller venues the wrestlers work in. I've heard the story about like some guy went in to take a shower and here it was just a hose like draped over a 2x4. So I'm wondering what was the worst condition you experienced in like a small venue locker room? Anything stand out?
Wow. I mean, there's been maybe a time or two, and I can't remember exactly where we would do like we and sometimes like Bill Watts would and we would do double shows. We do like we would on the weekends we'd do a matinee on Saturday afternoon and a show that night, and then we would go in and do a matinee on Sunday morning and then a show that night.
Mhm.
I can remember Bill flying us from like we would do a show and then we would get up and we would fly from I think we'd fly out of Baton Rouge, fly into Oklahoma City, and we would I mean we'd leave early out of Baton Rouge, fly to Oklahoma City, do a matinee, an afternoon show and then they had cars there to pick us up and drive us to Tulsa and do another show that night.
Ooh,
I mean, there were some weekends where we would do, four shows in 2 days,
brutal.
Saturday and Sunday. Yeah, that's brutal. But back to that question, I don't know. If and I've been in some. I mean, I guess there's one place. What was that place called? Oh my gosh. I think it was called La Ranger, Louisiana.
All right.
And it was like that. I mean, I wouldn't, I would just put my stuff back on, get in my car and shower when I got home. I mean, it was nasty.
Man, when you wanna put on, like, your street clothes after you had a sweaty wrestling match, that's pretty telling that, not a
Yeah. Well, and sometimes, just depending on the time of the year, right? But sometimes I would just, throw my jacket on, my ring jacket, and sweats or something, and because you got to where you knew it's like, okay, where are we? Okay, I gotta throw my sweats in my bag because I'm not gonna shower there.
Ooh, man, the life of a wrestler not always glamorous, huh?
Yeah, no.
Alright, Ted, let me do 2 more, and then we'll wrap this one up. Next up, we've got Brian McCann who asks, "Was anyone really scared of the snake?" So, that's part of your rivalry that we have not really explored, Ted. You're working with Jake. That means you're gonna have a snake put on you every so often. What did you think of that?
Um, I didn't like. I still don't like snakes, but when it was kind of like that, the big snake,
Mhm.
the big, like the big bull constrictors or whatever, and the thing about it is, that what they, it's the way I think you keep them really well fed and they're not going to bother you. But when they start getting hungry is that's when you start looking like a sandwich. but there was no time, and I had watched Jake with the snake in other matches and everything, and saw that. And just the feel of a snake, I don't like it either. I said, but if I have to, you know what, just get it on me, then get the dang thing off of me. And I don't want to touch it.
Wow, what a pro! I think a lot of guys, especially a guy with
And
your tenure.
I tell you what we did. Okay, Virgil, right? Virgil's my bodyguard, right?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly how we did it, but we get in the ring, and he nails me, and somehow he nails Virgil, and he'd get the 1, 2, 3 count, and then he would point to the bag, and all the people would erupt, and so we're both laid out, and of course the people are expecting him to take the snake and put it on me.
Yeah.
He put it on Virgil. Oh my God. Virgil launched that snake. I mean, when that snake hit him, he hit one of these, and it went out of the ring and onto the floor. Oh my gosh. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Oh my
You
gosh.
talk about, I mean, his eyes were like this.
And damn well that Jake knew Virgil didn't want it, so that's why he did it.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it was just a rib, and he laughed about it later too.
Oh, too funny.
Said, yeah, and I mean, I told him, I said, I don't think my reaction would have been any different.
No, and Jake is also, because he was working the house show loop with you guys, so that means he's working with you a lot, and there's a lot of opportunities to get this snake put on you. And I know that Jake said that at one point he actually stuffed the snake down Virgil's pants, like the front of
Oh
his
yeah, yeah.
pants. Man, Jake, ruthless out there.
Yeah, I wonder, didn't he? He used to have the big snake. Did he ever talk about getting a cobra?
Yes, so it was that would be 1991 is when he got the Cobra. When he became a heel is when he got the Cobra.
They would defang them and devenom them, and so even if it, and he did it, like if it bit your arm or tried to chew on you or something, it couldn't do much.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't care, brother. I hate snakes. The only good snake is a dead snake. Yeah, but they kill the rodents. I said, I don't care. You let me kill a rodent.
What did you think whenever Jake got that Cobra to bite Randy Savage and it drew blood and it was like a really scarring moment for a lot of fans? Do you remember that?
I do. And of course they obviously didn't do that without rehearsing it and everything. And God bless Randy for his willingness to do it.
Man, I don't think I'd want one chewing on me. No, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, one more. And it's actually about Virgil. And this is a pretty interesting one, Ted, because it's something that just came out after Virgil passed away. Matthew Gibbon asks, did you know that Virgil lied about his age and was actually older than you?
No.
So Virgil, it's everybody was saying like born 1962 after he passed away, 1962 to 2024. And here it was revealed that he was actually born in 1951. And he had
When?
Virgil was born in 1951 and had lied about his age.
51?
Yep, 1951, but he was telling people that he was born in 1962. So Vince believed it, everybody believed it, and here after he passed away, actually a guy that I know here in Pittsburgh has one of Mike's driver's licenses that I guess Mike must have given to him somewhere along the way, and it says right on it, 1951.
Wow. I never knew that.
Isn't that wild?
And it's, Virgil's, it's a sad story. I mean, I liked Mike. I mean, Mike was basically a good guy. I felt for the guy, but he did some things. And I look back at that and I think some of those things he did, he may have done out of desperation, like, for example, I went to a Comic-Con that I had never been to before, and one of the guys said, "Hey, Ted," he says, "sorry you couldn't make it last time." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, the last show we had here, Virgil was here. You were advertised as well." And then Virgil showed up and said that something had come up and you just couldn't make it. And I went, "What?" So what Virgil was doing is that he was contacting these people and seemingly booking both of us, and I never knew about it at all. And he would show up himself, and there's no me. Well, he and I had a conference, and I didn't scream and holler at him. I just told him, I said, "Look, man," I said, "you can't do that." I said, because, you do that and then I don't get booked.
Yep.
If they believe what you say, and then that, and they're thinking they've booked me, and then I don't show up, and so I had to talk my way around a few times like that. And I was mad at him, but it's kind of like hindsight's 2020. Later I got to thinking about it. And then when I would, what I told him was, I said, I can't afford personally to fly you anywhere and put you up in a hotel. But if they can do it, or if the show is close enough to Pittsburgh that you can drive back, I said, great. I said, then I will have them advertise us appearing together. But there were some shows that he just showed up on his own, and that was okay. And when he did, and I didn't know he was going to be there, I would say, "Come on, bring your table over here next to mine, and we'll do this thing together." And I could help him that way. But I hate to say it, but there were just times when he would lie when it was easier to tell the truth.
Man, gotta feel for Virgil. It's like you go from being on television and action figures being made of you, you're in magazines, stuff like that, to all of a sudden now it's like you're in a position where, you can't get booked and you've got to show up, you're on your own with a table of your own and try to make a couple extra bucks. So, man, like I see online where a lot of fans try to kind of make a joke of it and stuff, but the reality is, like, this is a human being. I know it's like they're over the top cartoon
Yeah,
characters, but this is a person trying to make a living. So, man, God bless Virgil. Sad that he's gone, but it's under. I've seen a lot of people online ask about, like, well, I know that Ted and Virgil had an issue. Like, why did they have an issue? And there's kind of your answer, guys.
yeah,
It's not always easy, and it's not always black and white, and life doesn't always turn out the way you want it
yeah,
to, right?
yeah,
Man, I'll tell you what. If ever we need to look at the Bash and Booger picture again, it's right now. So there it is. And I think that's a good way to wrap up the show. Man,
I'll
Ted.
take my man Virgil over Bastion Booger any day.
Well, look, that's gonna do it for this week. And next week we are gonna kick off WrestleMania season with something I know that fans have been looking forward to. We are gonna look back 35 years to 1989 and WrestleMania 5. Brother, I cannot wait to talk to you about it. And in the meantime, I want our listeners to make sure to follow Ted on his social media at MDM Ted DiBiase. Follow the podcast at social, or follow the podcast on social at Ted DiBiase Pod on all platforms, and follow me on Twitter at Marcus P. D'Angelo. Ted, taking fan questions. You never know what we're going to talk about. Never know what kind of creepy pictures we're going to see of people. But but we always have a good time, don't we?
Yeah, we always do. And so, again, as I always do, I must remind you all that everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
We'll see you guys next time right here on Everybody's Got a Pod.